and operation solutions for the property industry. And over this time, Bueno has grown to a 70-plus person technology company with installations on 1,500-plus buildings in 8 countries. And your operations are based down under, right? So welcome from probably the farthest away that we've got today. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Leon. We'll have 20 minutes, and then we'll give 5 minutes for Q&A, and then go on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks. And that was Zach.
There you go.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me here today. Yeah, it's great to be in San Diego. We did come a long way to be here. I came via New Orleans, so that made it even longer. My parents were over here visiting the States on holidays. I landed in, actually first landed in Nashville after 20 odd hours flying, and then spent 9 hours in the car with my parents. So yeah, so it's definitely been a long road to get here. And yeah, I don't think I can let this opportunity go without cracking a cheesy joke. So yeah, I'm really stoked to be here. Thanks for having me. So what I'm here to talk about is how we can use Haystack as the foundation of further embedding analytics into the operational model that everyone uses to run their buildings. I'm going to run through what that actually means, why we should do it, what's in it for all the people that are taking this to the next step, embedding it further and further into their business models, who should be thinking about doing this stuff, what that incremental value is of doing that last piece of integration. What are the kinks? This is where we start talking about Haystack and the contrast and the relevance of trying to make sure that we've got structured data out of our equipment, also making sure that we've got structured data coming out of our humans too. And then what are the results? So I'll take you through some of that and some of our experiences that we've had along the way doing this with a couple of our customers. So, I guess probably everyone in the room's opinion, but definitely my opinion, is that data-driven operations is the next operational model. We've seen the industry as a whole go from reactive through to preventative. Preventative being, as the keynote speaker said earlier today, calendar-based, schedule-based. I have to do this task every week. I have to do this other task every month, another task every quarter. What we're talking about in evolving that from a preventative maintenance model into a data-driven maintenance model is using the data to decide whether the task has to be done, rather than using the calendar to decide whether that task has to be done. I don't think that there's any chance that we're ever going to get away from needing, physical inspection or physical attendance at buildings to do some of these maintenance tasks. But that if you look through somebody's maintenance management system and start breaking down all these individual tasks, there's a hell of a lot of opportunity there. Some of the opportunity exists with the instrumentation that already exists. A hell of a lot of that does. Some of those tasks might require extra instrumentation to evolve from being preventative to data-driven. But basically, the fundamental thing that we're talking about here, the fundamental shift, is that preventative approach to operations means checking something in case it's broken. Data-driven means using the data to decide whether it's broken and whether it needs attention. So the way that people get started in this space is that they tend to get some kind of analytics technology and apply that to a building. Typical use cases integrating with a BMS and an EMS. If you break down what's happened there, we've added an extra system to a building. That's another thing for the facility manager to worry about. And it's really a bolt-on to the existing set of systems at a building. If you turn the analytics package off tomorrow, things will probably still keep humming along pretty well, just like they did before the analytics package was there. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this slide is that just throwing an analytics package onto a building, that's not really doing data-driven operations. That's not really changing the fundamental nature of the operational model. You need to go a little bit deeper than that.
Step backwards. stand up there.
Okay, this is done for.
There's a machine you have to add a quarter to.
I'm not familiar with this technology. Oh, hang on. Someone had rocked it. Maybe me. Probably me.
There you go.
All right, there we go. So, the evolution of data-driven operations. So this kind of mirrors my experience in the industry. I've been in the property industry for maybe like 13 years now, despite my baby face. And I started out as an energy consultant. And we were going into buildings that had checklists, right? Every building had checklists, or most, at least in Australia, everyone was following a preventative maintenance model. And people were using checklists to decide when they needed to maybe check some trend logs, inspect whether a valve was passing or not, check trays and drains, those kind of tasks. That's the starting point, and it's where a lot of people are now still. It's probably where the vast majority of people are now in terms of their adoption of these kind of technologies and how they're running their buildings. Next, spreadsheet analytics, aka Manalytics, right? We're talking about jumping onto a BMS, downloading a bunch of history files, chucking that in a spreadsheet to find some damper that looks like it's seized, or a valve that looks like it's passing, or maybe a set point that should be a bit higher or a bit lower. But it's more sophisticated than checklists, but it's still, you know, you're putting stuff in a spreadsheet, it's a hack. It's a hacked way of doing analytics. It needs a lot of labor, hence Manalytics or Womanalytics, you know, to be inclusive and diverse in this presentation. But we're showing the evolution here, right? You know, the kind of analogy, all those little dots there, little extra infinity stones that we're getting. I don't know if everyone watched Avengers, but we're getting more and more powerful with how we're using analytics, right? So the next piece is when you actually get us the proper analytics platform. Something that will by itself, will have an integration with the building systems, will by itself come to conclusions about whether or not there need to be maintenance tasks done, or whether control strategies need to be optimized based on some algorithms that you or I or this guy over here is programmed into it. And that's really where a lot of people were kind of in this space maybe 5 years ago or so, I'd say. They've got an analytics platform on their building, but they've graduated from spreadsheets in the algorithmic sense, but they haven't necessarily graduated from spreadsheets in how they're managing the workflow or the results or the action that follows on from those analytic results. So there's a few more steps that we can take from here. Got another infinity stone. So what we're talking about here is probably the current, you know, typical, not leading edge, you know, maybe the current typical best practice. Where we've got a proper piece of analytics technology, doing fault detection, looking for optimization, results on optimization algorithms, and it has embedded within it some kind of workflow management system. So the tickets, the data, so we've evolved from the data going into a spreadsheet to the data going into a bit of software, the software having algorithms, but then the actions going into a spreadsheet. We've now evolved so that those actions that are generated go into an actual piece of software that tracks where all the tickets are up to. Now, we don't want to dumb down what everyone in this room does, but really, we're just creating tickets in a different way. We're creating tickets from some formulas rather than creating tickets from a calendar. And so this is the next evolution. Current best practice is to have a piece of analytics technology plugged into a workflow management system, right? But this is typically a standalone, the typical best practice is a standalone workflow management system that is also integrated in with the analytics package. Where we want to get to? So we want to get all those infinity stones, we want to get the infinity gauntlet as well, and we want to embed the results of the analytics and embed the creation of those tickets and those tasks into the way that people are just running the buildings, they're just doing their day-to-day life. You know, there's already probably a CMMS that exists across this building portfolio or across this portfolio of services contracts. We don't need to have another separate parallel system that's doing all the preventative tasks and all the reactive tasks. Analytics or data-driven tasking is just another source of tasks. You're never going to have an all-encompassing data-driven model of operation. There's always going to be a chip tile that needs to be replaced. or a door that needs to be painted. So there's always going to be a broader CMMS that we are going to have to fit within. So we want to just make ourselves part of the day-to-day for our customers. And that's the next phase for embedding these types of tools within the way that people run their buildings. Why do you want to do that? Well, you get enhanced data sets. How much more enhanced could you get than having all of this time interval data coming from all these field devices? Well, you actually get some human-generated data as well. Human-generated data in terms of the cost to repair, in terms of the actual rectification that was done, and what that helps you do over time is build a data set that allows you to not just predict when a fault's occurred, predict what rectification works need to take place, and also predict the cost. It's really interesting. Right? That's the next level of enhancing the value that we can get out of operational data. We can enhance the workflows. So we can look at what type of analytic results move through the workflow, at what speed, what percentage get from being identified on a site to purchase order being raised, and we can look to move them through more fluidly. We can look to automatically validate that works have been done correctly. We can use all this information to improve our CapEx planning. And also, as part of this exercise, we can go through and look at the existing workflows that exist in these CMMSs, which can get pretty messy. You know, just as every building is a snowflake, every single implementation of a CMMS is a snowflake as well. And these things can get pretty messy over time. So we can use this as an opportunity to streamline the processes that these buildings are running through. Who might want to look at this? Well, aside from me, services vendors. Services vendors are the people selling this calendar-driven maintenance. You know, for a couple of reasons, they may feel commoditization pressure, and they may want to look at being able to offer a differentiated product into the market. And this can enable them to do that in an integrated way across their operation, rather than have to send their technicians out to site with a separate app for their data-driven tasking and a separate app for their calendar-based tasking. It embeds these kind of tools into their product that they're selling. I mean, the main uptake that we're seeing, so we're from the deep south, right, in Australia. The main uptake that we're seeing of this kind of level of integration into people's businesses is in the SI community, but with a little bit of uptake in mechanical contractors. Now, let's not forget that we're not just talking about BMS and HVAC in terms of the application of data-driven operations. We actually need to consider all of the engineering services on a building, whether we're talking about fire systems, elevators and escalators, and access control, and all these other systems that require calendar-based tasking have equal opportunity to have this kind of evolution of the model applied to them. Building operators. Building operators will look to embed these types of data tools into their management platform, whether they're owner-operators or whether they're third-party operators. It again can offer them a differentiated product, or whether they're owner-operators, it can offer them a lot of extra efficiency. We're talking about improving the operational quality and the productivity of their staff, right? People, if they don't have to learn about what analytics is, if it's just a task that shows up in their CMMS, there's a lot better engagement with it. This helps to manage the talent pool dilution, at least we're seeing down under, where we've got less and less ex-trades going into facility management positions and more ex-security guards and ex-cleaning supervisors going into those roles. The uptake that we're seeing is with owner-operators, really. Like owner-operators who don't have that split incentive. They put the most pressure on them to reduce their bottom line. You know, our biggest customer is a supermarket that operates at razor-thin margins, and you know, we can remove barriers to them getting value, remove barriers to them saving that $500 or $1,000 or $10,000, or in these guys' cases, they've saved over $20 million. That's a hell of a lot of bananas that they don't have to sell. The people that have the main drivers for uptake, or the main stakeholders that are uptaking these kind of practices are SIs, a little bit of mechanical contractors, definitely much stronger on the HVAC and BMS services than other engineering services, and people that don't have to worry about split incentives on the operational costs. What are the kinks? This is where we start talking about Haystack. Data normalization. We've got to kill free text, right? As soon as we get free text going into these CMMSs, then the data becomes useless. We've got to really think about specifying out some structure to rectificate the opportunities for filling in each of these fields that are in these platforms. The workflow quality. Is things start looking pretty complicated once you add analytics, especially once you look at adding analytics into the mix. And make sure people want to actually use this stuff. Engagement is really important. Data normalization. So just like every building is a snowflake, hence we've got tools like Haystack, every CMMS is also a snowflake. There is so much configurability in the way that people structure their tasking and the way that people structure their workflows that we need to take a step back from how these things are initially set up and put some rigor into the design to enable us to collect useful data. I mean, you guys probably can't see anything that clearly on this page, but it's just mainly to show that there's a hell of a lot of fields there, there's a hell of a lot of configurability, and there's some X's where we've made some decisions about where we have to kind of narrow the focus of how flexible people can be in responding. And this is some examples, right? So we've got some specific maintenance tasks that have needed to be done, some reactive ones, and then we've put some we've put a bit of better control around the different remedies that people can say that they've done. And the data is valuable because not only can we then moving forward, not only can we then predict there's a fault, we can also predict which works need to be undertaken to fix the fault. So what's wrong with current best practice? We're talking about analytics plugged into a parallel CMMS. Hey, it saves energy, it improves the comfort at a site, it gives you better maintenance and operational quality. But the reality is that it creates more work. That's kind of like an ugly kind of truth about what we're doing, is that people now have a parallel system that they've got to worry about. We've added in extra steps into their workflow. They need to, even as simple as they now need to remember a new username and password, right? You've added work just with that fact, let alone the fact that you have to train up their contractors and how to use all these different tools as well. And they need to get familiar with talking about analytics without feeling stupid, right? You've added an extra burden to them. You've created a better outcome for the building. You've created a worse outcome for the workload of the people involved. So this was what one of the workflows looked like for our one of our clients after we added analytics into the piece. We can see what's in that box there is what's the contractor's work, and there's a lot of steps in there, right? There's a lot of steps in closing out a ticket. But if you pretend you're a management consultant for a day and start looking at all these different processes, you can streamline it. Once you've got it plugged into the CMMS, once you've got the tickets being created by the CMMS itself rather than by your parallel platform. So we're talking in terms of labour savings here, just on the admin side of these guys' businesses, like about $40,000 a year worth of admin labour savings on the client side and about $40,000 a year worth of admin labour savings on the contractor's side as well. So that's a big win-win, making this stuff more streamlined. Stakeholder engagement, like at the end of the day, I won't talk about all of these points, but at the end of the day, if someone didn't even know that this maintenance task had come from analytics, everyone's lives would be a hell of a lot easier. Putting the source of a task that's coming from analytics can add some stigma to it, especially amongst a lot of the traditional kind of people that have been in the industry doing the preventative model for a long time. It's really hard to get that engagement if you have just made someone's job harder and made their life harder and created more work, whether that's a facilities manager on a site or whether that's a technician who has to go and do his maintenance hours and is tasking the building. I'm running a bit out of time. I have 56 seconds left, but I wanted to put some graphics up. So just to show you guys that we were actually doing this and getting data out of CMMSs and putting data into CMMSs. But there we go. There's a little bit of proof that we're doing this stuff. You know, the uptake isn't huge, but uptake is definitely amongst our most the people that we've worked with in the industry that have the most maturity with using analytics. You know, they've seen the results, and they've also seen that life should be a hell of a lot easier to get those same results. So the end state. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is remove the barriers to driving action and getting value. We want to collect an enhanced data set of the human side of building operations, which will allow us to predict if rectification works and give us better planning. You know, I haven't actually put up there, but there's all of the opportunities to enhance the workflows as well. And this stuff, I think, can be really, really powerful. And I think we're going to be talking a lot more about, or maybe talking about a lot more commonly about next Haystack. That's me. Thanks, everyone.
We've got 3 or 4 minutes here. We'll try and keep it on track. We'll give 5 minutes for people who have questions for Leon. Anyone out there wondering anything? Please.
I'm curious to know what, like, from the data perspective on the normalization of asset data systems, how you see that that intersects with what Haystack uses.
Yeah.
Asset side.
I mean, we're basically talking about applying normalization to a different system, right? Whether we're talking about having tags for elevators, having tags for having tags for HVAC. You know, we're effectively talking about having tags for maybe different tickets might be the way to look at it. So I guess that might be the kind of mindset that people have to look at if we were going to standardize the approach that's used to deliver these kind of solutions.
Yeah, so, yeah, I guess it's, you know, what does it need? What do we need to do to get from here to there?
I think a bunch of people that do it, and enough people that do it have critical mass to want to jump into a room here and contribute to it, I think.
Second row?
Yeah, you talked about CMMS in general, generically. Are there specific CMMSs that you'll be working with your clients?
We're pretty, like most modern software has a way to integrate with it. So we've done a handful. Like on our side, we don't really care what the CMMS is, just that it's the one that they're using rather than us trying to force like our kind of workflow management system on their
So
stuff.
you create an integration to it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Back?
On the data-driven model, how do you see kind of the industry selling to people? Because we're seeing a lot of people saying it's the reduction of time on site, but that's on the grounds that the traditional PPM was not. Whereas there's the risk that I can tell you need to do a lot more. So when your people sign up for maintenance contracts, it's a high level of how do they actually.
I can see where you're coming from with that question. I think that the industry has a lot of kind of technical debt in the services contracts that are being delivered. And there's been commoditization pressure for so long that maybe a lot of the savings from data-driven maintenance have already been given away just in maintenance that's not going to be done. Like that's definitely true for a subset of the maintenance contracts that are being done out there. My philosophy on this has always been, I don't really care. I don't think that we should look to use analytics as a way to chop even more dollars out of maintenance contracts. I think that we should use analytics and a data-driven approach to provide more value out of your maintenance dollars. And we want to create a product there that's so valuable that people are saying, oh, geez, can we spend more money on maintenance because it's giving us so much value, rather than how do we spend less money on maintenance every year.
One more.
So most of your work is integrated with an existing CMMS.